She hadn't planned on staying, maybe a week, 2 at most, long enough to clear out her mother's house, meet with the lawyer, decide what to do with the old furniture, the photo albums, the fading recipes stuck to the fridge with yellowing tape. But as she pulled into the driveway of the house she grew up in, she felt time loosen around her. The gravel crunched beneath the tires, the same way it had when she was 17, and swore she'd never come back. The porch light flickered, still faulty after all these years. A spiderweb stretched between the railing and the mailbox, undisturbed, like even the spiders had claimed this place in her absence. Inside, the air was still. Not stale exactly, but heavy, as if it had been holding its breath, waiting. Dust floated lazily in the sunbeams cutting across the living room, where nothing had changed. The same faded couch, the same Afghan her mom used to wrap around herself during late-night movies. The same stack of magazines on the coffee table, like her mother might walk back in and pick one up at any moment. She moved through the room slowly, fingers trailing along the walls, catching on memories. The smell of lavender hung faintly in the air, her mother's scent. That and something else. Something older. Time. Upstairs, her childhood bedroom was almost laughably frozen in time. Posters of bands she no longer listened to. A corkboard filled with postcards, photos, scribbled dreams. The journal with the broken clasp still hidden behind the bookshelf, just where she left it. She sank onto the bed, knees folded beneath her, and looked around at the ghost of who she used to be. The grief was a dull, throbbing thing. Not the kind that roared, but the kind that hummed in the background like a bad song you couldn't switch off. Her mother was gone. The call had come suddenly, a stroke. No warnings, no time for goodbyes. And maybe that's why she came back, not just to sort the house, but to rewrite the ending, to find a way to say goodbye to a woman she loved fiercely, but understood only in pieces. It didn't take long for word to spread through town that she was back. People she hadn't seen in years popped up at the grocery store, the pharmacy, the gas station. They asked the same gentle questions. How long are you staying? Are you doing okay? Your mom was such a light. But beneath the polite chatter was something else, the weight of unspoken things. And at the heart of it all was one name no one said aloud. Sam, her first love, her heartbreak, her once-upon-a-time future. They'd grown up together, next-door neighbors, best friends turned something more. Summer nights sneaking out to lie on the roof and trace constellations. Winters wrapped in shared scarves and stolen kisses. They were supposed to leave together, to chase a bigger life beyond the town limits. But life had other plans. She left. He didn't. And they hadn't spoken since. Now, walking through the town square, she caught glimpses of the places they used to haunt. The bookstore where they shared their first kiss. The dock where they made promises too big for their teenage hearts. And suddenly, the memories weren't just memories. They were here, alive, woven into every corner. She spent her days sorting through her mother's things. Old photos, letters, recipes scrawled in the margins of cookbooks. But she also found journals. Not diaries exactly, but collections of thoughts, reflections, bits of poetry and prayers. Her mother had written about love, about loneliness, about regret. And slowly, through her mother's words, she began to see her in new light. Not just as a parent, but as a woman. A complicated, flawed, deeply feeling woman who had loved her daughter fiercely, even when she didn't always know how to show it. It was in one of those long afternoons, sorting through boxes in the attic, that she heard his voice again. She was standing in line at the cafe, clutching a coffee she didn't even want, when he walked in. Sam. Taller than she remembered. Hair a little grayer at the temples. Eyes exactly the same. Stormy, steady, unreadable. He paused. She froze. Hey, he said, voice low, careful. She nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. Hey. That was it. No dramatic reunion. No flood of emotion. Just a moment. A breath. A ripple in the surface of her carefully guarded calm. But that one word, That hey was enough to crack open something she thought she'd buried. And she knew then, this wasn't going to be a quick trip. The house wasn't the only thing that needed sorting. Her past, her grief, her heart, they were all here, waiting. And the story was just beginning. It's strange how memories sneak in when you least expect them. After that first unexpected run-in at the cafe, she couldn't stop thinking about Sam. Not because of anything he said, but because of everything he didn't. The silence between them felt louder than words. Familiar, loaded, dangerous. She tried to brush it off, to stay focused on the boxes, the phone calls, the business of grief. But grief doesn't play by rules. It has its own rhythm. It pulls you backward while the world keeps moving forward. One night, curled up on the old living room couch, with one of her mother's journals, she read a line that stopped her breath cold. I wonder if she'll ever forgive me for the way I made her choose. It was written in her mother's slanted, looping script. No explanation, no context. Just that one aching sentence, floating on the page like a confession. And it made her wonder, had her mother known? About her and Sam? About the fight? About why she left? The memories came in flashes. The night before she left town, she and Sam had stood in the driveway, voices low but sharp. He wanted to stay. He had roots here, family, responsibility, a sense of place. She wanted more. She wanted the city, the noise, the chance to figure herself out, without a past tugging at her sleeve. They both thought the other would change their mind. Neither did. The next morning, she left without saying goodbye. Now, walking those same streets, she could almost feel her younger self watching her. 22, stubborn and hopeful, full of ambition and fear. She had believed leaving was the only way to become who she was meant to be. And maybe it was. But something about being back made her question what she'd sacrificed to grow. She started running into Sam more often, not planned, not entirely accidental either. A wave at the farmer's market, a nod at the library, a shared smile at the town's annual movie night in the park, where they used to sneak beers and kiss in the dark when they were teenagers. One afternoon, as she stepped out of the bookstore, he was there. Do you still read the ending first? He asked, his voice almost teasing. She froze. I forgot I did that. You said life's too short to waste time on a bad ending? She laughed softly, the sound surprising her. Still true. He offered to walk her home, and she let him. Their steps fell into rhythm easily, like they used to. He asked about her life, her job, her apartment, whether she still drank black coffee with too much sugar. She asked about his work at his father's hardware store, about the dog he used to talk about adopting. He never did. There was a moment, just one, when their hands brushed and neither of them moved away. Back at the house, he lingered on the porch. You look good, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. Different, but good. So do you, she replied, and it wasn't a lie. Then silence. Not the awkward kind, but the kind full of words unsaid. Regret, curiosity, history. Why did you leave? He asked suddenly. She took a breath. Because I thought I had to. Because I didn't know who I was here. Because I was scared that if I stayed, I'd never find out. He nodded slowly, like he understood, even if it still hurt. I never hated you for it, he said, but I hated how you left. She looked down. Me too. That night, she lay awake, listening to the creaks and groans of the old house. The walls remembered everything. The joy, the shouting, the quiet heartbreaks. She dreamed of her mother, young, vibrant, laughing in the kitchen as music played from the old radio. She saw herself at the table, scribbling poems in a notebook, and her mother glancing over, pretending not to read, smiling softly. And then the dream shifted. Her mother standing in the hallway, hand pressed against the doorframe, whispering something she couldn't hear. When she woke, tears were already sliding down her cheeks. The next morning, she found a shoebox tucked behind a row of cookbooks. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Some were to her. Most were never sent. Others were to someone else entirely, a name she didn't recognize. One stood out, a letter to Sam. Written years ago. Her mother had tried to reach out after she left, to apologize, to explain things she hadn't said at the time. The letter had never been mailed. Reading it made her chest ache. Her mother had seen more than she let on, had known her daughter's heart better than she realized. That's the thing about the past. It doesn't stay buried. It lingers in attic boxes, in unfinished conversations, in the way someone says your name after all these years. And slowly, she realized she wasn't just cleaning out a house. She was making space for grief, for truth, for the possibility that some endings might not be endings at all. They might just be the middle of something new. She started taking long walks again. Not to get anywhere, just to move, to breathe, to think. Mornings were crisp, quiet, and the lake looked exactly as it had in her memories. Still, blue, and honest. It didn't care that she'd left. It just welcomed her back. Some mornings, she brought coffee and sat on the dock with her journal. She wrote about her mother, about Sam, about the version of herself that had gotten lost somewhere between growing up and growing away. It was during one of those mornings that Sam joined her again, this time with 2 mugs in hand. "Thought you might be here?" he said, sitting beside her without asking. They didn't say much that first morning, just drank coffee, listened to the water lap against the wood, and let the silence do the heavy lifting. But it became a thing, an unspoken ritual, a soft thread connecting them again. With each passing day, they fell back into a rhythm, not like before, when everything was urgent and burning, but something quieter, wiser. He showed her the small renovations he'd done on his father's store. She brought him an old photo of them from high school she'd found tucked in a book. They started talking about their lives more honestly. He confessed he'd nearly left the town once too, but stayed because his mom got sick, and then time just passed. He didn't regret staying, but sometimes wondered what could have been. She admitted she had chased success so hard. She didn't know if she'd ever stop to ask what it would feel like to actually arrive. They were different people now, but somehow still made sense. One evening, they went to the town fair. Lights glowing, music in the air, kids running barefoot through the grass. She laughed more than she had in months, maybe years. Sam won her a cheap stuffed bear at the ring toss, and she pretended not to care, but tucked it into her bag like it meant something. They shared a funnel cake. She got powdered sugar on her nose. He wiped it off without thinking, then froze as if realizing too late how familiar that gesture was. She smiled. Everything softened. Later that night, as he walked her to the porch, it started to rain. Not heavy, just a warm summer sprinkle. She looked up, face tilted toward the sky. "You always liked the rain," he said. "It makes everything feel like it's being washed clean," she replied. Their eyes met, and just like that, he kissed her. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't a question. It was an answer. Slow, steady, familiar. The kind of kiss that doesn't ask for permission because it already knows the door's open. For a moment, the world fell away. But after, as they pulled apart, reality slid back in. She took a shaky breath. "This is dangerous." He nodded. "Yeah, but maybe it's worth it." They didn't make any promises that night. They didn't define what it meant. But something shifted. And over the next few days, the house began to empty. She packed the last of her mother's things into labeled boxes, some to keep, some to donate, some to store. But her steps slowed as she reached the bedroom closet. There, in the back, she found a dress, soft blue, hand-stitched embroidery. Her mother's favorite, the one she wore the summer they went to the lake together, just the 2 of them, after her father left. She held it close, breathing in what little scent remained. Her heart ached, not just with grief, but with gratitude, for all the imperfect love her mother had given, for the ways she tried, for the strength it must have taken to raise a daughter and let her go. That night, she lit a candle. She didn't know if she believed in signs or spirits or anything beyond the here and now, but she spoke to her mother out loud anyway. "I forgive you," she whispered, "and I hope you forgive me too." The next morning, Sam waited on the porch with coffee. They sat side by side, not touching, not talking, just existing in a space that had been broken and rebuilt. He finally asked, "Are you staying?" She looked out at the lake, at the trees, at the porch she'd sat on for most of her life. "I don't know yet," she said, "but for the first time, I'm not rushing to leave." There was still so much she didn't know. About her future, about what this meant for her and Sam, about where grief ends and healing begins. But for now, she knew this. Something inside her had begun to thaw, to stretch, to grow. And maybe, just maybe, love was still possible. Not the reckless kind they once had, but something better. Rooted, real, and ready. The thing about healing is, it isn't a straight line. It loops, folds, unravels, and sometimes it hurts worse right before it gets better. That's what happened next. She had just started to feel steady again. Not healed, not whole, but present. Her mornings were quiet, her evenings warm, her thoughts less tangled. And Sam, he was there. Not as a question from the past, but as something real in the now. But nothing stays untouched forever. It started small. A phone call from her boss in the city. A reminder of the job she still technically had. A project that needed her. A team waiting on her return. It was the kind of life she used to thrive in. Meetings, deadlines, ambition burning at both ends. She felt the old self stir again. The one who left without looking back. The one who believed moving forward meant never looking behind. But this time, the decision didn't feel so easy. Sam noticed it right away. The way her smile tightened. The way her eyes drifted during conversations. One night, as they stood outside her house, watching the sky turn purple with dusk, he asked quietly, "You're leaving, aren't you?" She hesitated. "I don't know." But they both knew that wasn't true. He took a step back. "Why does it always feel like I'm just a pause in your story?" Her heart squeezed. "You're not. You never were. Then why do I always end up standing still while you chase something else?" There it was. The wound. The truth he had carried for years. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Because what could she say? That she didn't mean to hurt him? That she wasn't sure what she was doing? That she was scared of loving someone who might need her to stay? He looked at her with those storm-colored eyes and said, "You don't have to explain. I just thought this time might be different." And with that, he walked away. The days that followed felt hollow. She went through the motions, finished sorting the last of her mother's things, made lists of logistics, even started replying to work emails. But her heart wasn't in it. She found herself waking up at night, reaching for her journal, trying to write the truth into something that made sense. But the words came out jagged, confused. She missed Sam. Not just for the comfort he brought, but for the way he saw her, even when she couldn't see herself clearly. One afternoon, she went to the lake. The dock was empty. She sat alone, watching the wind ripple across the water, and thought about what it meant to belong somewhere. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of love. That's when it hit her. She had always believed her life had to look a certain way to mean something. Big city, big career, big wins. But maybe meaning wasn't in the size of things. Maybe it was in the quiet, the stillness. The people who knew how you liked your coffee and remembered your childhood dog's name. Maybe it was in the moments you stayed, not the ones you chased. Later that evening, she found another letter. This one wasn't in a box, but tucked between pages of a poetry book her mother had left beside the bed. It was addressed simply, "For when you're ready." The letter was raw and real. Her mother wrote about fear, about how hard it was to raise a daughter who wanted more than she ever had, about the guilt of trying to hold on, and the love in letting go. "I didn't know how to show you I was proud," she had written, "but I always was." Tears blurred the words. It wasn't closure, not completely, but it was something. That night, she didn't sleep. She walked the streets of the town she once ran from, now unsure if she ever wanted to leave again. At sunrise, she knocked on Sam's door. He opened it, surprised. Shirt wrinkled, hair messy. She could tell he hadn't been sleeping either. "I don't have all the answers," she said, "but I don't want to keep running from the people who matter." He studied her. "Are you staying?" "I'm not sure yet, but I want to try." There was silence. Then, slowly, he stepped aside and let her in. They didn't kiss. They didn't declare anything. They just sat. Two people in the middle of something fragile and true. And in that moment, it was enough. The house was nearly empty now. The walls stood bare, no longer holding the framed memories that once gave them meaning. Boxes were labeled. Keys were returned. The chapter was closing. But something inside her had changed. Where there had once been a plan, clear, sharp, ambitious, there was now something softer. Less like a map, more like a compass. She wasn't chasing a destination anymore. She was listening for direction. Her mother's presence lingered, not in the furniture or the smell of lavender, but in the quiet strength that had settled in her chest. In the way she stood taller. In the forgiveness that had begun to live in her bones. Sam didn't ask her to stay, not once. But he showed up, every morning, with coffee. Every evening, with silence or conversation, or just a look that said, "I see you." Not the version she had polished for the outside world. Not the one full of goals and checklists, but the real one. Grief-soaked, conflicted, still figuring it out. And she saw him too. The boy he used to be, sure, but also the man he had become. The one who didn't need big things to matter. The one who built a life with his hands and stayed rooted even when it was hard. They didn't rush. They went for walks. They rebuilt the garden behind her mother's house, just because it felt good to plant something new. They cooked dinners side by side, sometimes in silence, sometimes with music. They shared memories. His of the years she missed, hers of the life she tried to outrun. One afternoon, he asked if she wanted to come with him to a property outside town, an old cottage by the water he was thinking of fixing up. She hesitated, unsure what it meant. "I'm not asking you to move in," he said gently, "just to see it, just to imagine what a slower life might feel like." She stood there, wind lifting the hem of her jacket, and realized she could imagine it. A life with morning light on wood floors. A kitchen filled with music and mismatched mugs. A space where she could still write, still dream, but without the noise. Without the need to constantly prove her worth. For the first time, the thought of staying didn't feel like giving something up. It felt like choosing herself, choosing joy, not just achievement. She didn't quit her job, not yet, but she asked for time. Real time. And her boss, surprisingly, understood. People often expect grief to end in a neat way, to arrive at some point where it no longer hurts. But she learned grief wasn't something to finish. It was something you carry, reshape, learn to live beside. Like love, it changes form, but it doesn't leave you. She began writing again. Not emails, not reports, but real writing. Honest, raw, and rooted in the very soil she used to run from. Pages filled with reflections about her mother, about Sam, about the little moments that build a life. She wrote about the town she once called too small and now called enough. She wrote about second chances, about how sometimes they don't arrive in grand gestures, but in small, persistent invitations to show up again, to try again. And she wrote about love, not the dizzy kind, but the deep kind, the kind that steadies you when everything else shifts. Weeks turned into months. The cottage slowly took shape. New floors, fresh paint, wildflowers planted along the edge of the porch. She wasn't sure if she'd live there one day, but she was sure she liked building it. The town changed too, in subtle ways. A new bookshop opened. The cafe added an outdoor patio. Kids rode their bikes down streets she once sprinted down, and now strolled down slowly. She saw herself in those kids sometimes, hungry for something bigger, not yet realizing that big doesn't always mean better. One warm evening, she and Sam sat by the water, feet bare, sunset melting into the lake. "I don't know what comes next," she said quietly. "You don't have to," he replied. "You're already in it." She leaned into him, not because she needed to, because she wanted to. The stars came out slowly, like they were being stitched into the sky just for them. And for the first time in a long time, she felt full. Not with certainty, not with clarity, but with the peaceful truth that this moment, this messy, beautiful life, was enough. Not perfect, but real. And in the end, that's what she'd been chasing all along.